X-ray, baby. Hey, Chad Isaac? Hey, Chad Isaac? Yep, that's right. Looking sick. Looking shredded. Hey, Chad Isaac. Did I just hear a pipsqueak? What do you want, Nerd Isaac? Can't you see I'm in the dungeon, paying my dues? We're supposed to be shooting that AstraZeneca vaccine video today. Listen, Nerd Isaac, you're talking to a mass monster over here. I don't have time. People like those classic physiques back in the golden era of bodybuilder, I'm all about size. I'm all about that freak factor. Hey, Chad Isaac, we're supposed to shoot that AstraZeneca vaccine video today. You know, where else are people going to find their premature information about the essential coronavirus vaccines from some random guy on YouTube? Come on, we've got a lot of work to do. You know, I don't know who's done your electrical work here. It's so dusty. You know, I feel like I'm about to have an asthma attack. There's a fire hazard. No, this fire hazard's waiting to happen. Listen, you're dealing with a mass monster. You see the size? You see this freak? You see the symmetry? This is this grainy Photoshop look. You know, this is stage weight. Isaac, come on. I'm stage ready. I spent all night slaving over this vaccine for your vaccine. You know, doing I don't care research, putting in all this effort. I don't care if AstraZeneca made a Chad.
All right, hey, what is going on, you guys? Hope you enjoyed that intro and it was not too cringeworthy. Just trying something new here. So before I get into the video, I just wanted to address one thing. This is my new channel. My old channel I actually made when I was 13 years old, and a lot of the things when I was 13 that I found funny, I don't think is exactly relevant to what I'm doing on this channel anymore. So I'm just starting with a clean slate. This is my new channel. If you're subscribed to my old channel, thank you for subscribing. And yeah, I apologize, but make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so that every time I do anything, your life is disrupted and the time that you will never get back is wasted. Anyways, getting into the video, today we are taking a look at AstraZeneca's adenovirus ChAd vaccine. This vaccine goes by a couple different names, also called the ChAdOx1 vaccine, also called the AZD1222 vaccine. But I think ChAd is a more fitting name for this vaccine, especially from what AstraZeneca would have you believe. Supposedly their vaccine is using an older and more established viral vector platform. Supposedly their vaccine has a great efficacy and safety profile, and supposedly it has great storage and manufacturing capabilities. So I think, you know, for these reasons, ChAd is really a appropriate name for this vaccine. But, you know, are these claims true, or is AstraZeneca boosting a bit? Today we are going to be taking a deep dive into the research, and we're going to see how the ChAd vaccine stacks up to Pfizer's and Moderna's mRNA competitors. Like always, first I'm going to be breaking down the mechanism of action of this agent. Then I will be summarizing the phase 3 clinical research and comparing the ChAd vaccine to its competitors in terms of efficacy, safety, and practicality. And lastly, I'll be giving the ChAd vaccine a Wade score. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so AstraZeneca's ChAd vaccine is a chimp adenovirus vaccine. What that means is they took a chimp adenovirus, an adenovirus being the type of virus that causes the common cold. So they took the chimp adenovirus and they deleted some essential genes so that it can't replicate. And then they added in the gene that makes the COVID spike protein, so that when they inject the vaccine into your body, it infects your cells. It inserts the DNA of the virus into the nucleus of your cells, where that DNA is transcribed and translated into the COVID spike protein, which then I assume is expressed on the surface of your cells and generates an immune response that's adequate enough to protect you from future infection. And I think AstraZeneca does a pretty good job explaining how their vaccine is manufactured. So I'm just going to play that video back for you, and I'll just make some comments where I think would benefit you. Just give me a sec here, figure out this. Okay. Let's watch.
Approaches to vaccine development to prime the body's immune response to COVID-19 include using weakened viruses or viral proteins, or using specific viral genetic code, either DNA or RNA directly, or creating viral vectors with specific viral genetic code.
All right, so I just wanted to pause here. So most vaccines today are using the technology on the left, and that is the weakened viruses and viral proteins. That's like the majority of vaccines today. Pfizer and Moderna are going with the genetic code type of vaccine over here. So they're using mRNA. Nothing's really been approved that uses this type of vaccine so far, at least for human use, mind you. So this is pretty new technology. And then AstraZeneca is using the viral vector that you see on the right-hand side. And there's been a lot of talk that this is like a more proven vaccine technology. Like apparently, you'll hear that people have used it before. There's a lot more studies on these kinds of vaccines and yada, yada, yada. And that's kind of true. Like these viral vector vaccines have been around for a lot longer than the mRNA vaccines, for sure. There's a lot of animal vaccines that use this type of mechanism of action. However, there's only really been one viral vector vaccine that's been approved for human use, and that's the Ebola vaccine that was approved in 2019. And of course, that's not including Russia's Sputnik 5 vaccine, which is also an adenovirus vaccine. But their vaccine was famously approved without doing phase 3 studies, which is pretty risky. Mind you, their vaccine could be very good. It's just a risky move by Vladimir Putin. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, I just wanted to point out the fact that viral vector vaccines are not exactly a proven technology, and there's still a lot of unknowns when it comes to using these types of vaccines in a larger and more diverse population. Okay, so let's get back to the video.
A COVID-19 adenoviral vector vaccine is an adenovirus vector based on a common cold that has been modified and inserted with the genetic material for the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. Production starts with assembly of...
Okay, so they don't tell you it here, but they're actually using a chimp adenovirus, and I think it's important to point that out. The reason why they're going with a chimp virus is because if they went with a human virus, there's a chance that you may have already been infected with the human virus, and then you'd have antibodies to that human virus. And, if you had antibodies to the virus that they'd use, that obviously wouldn't be able to do its job because you just kill the virus before it could even get to your cells and infect your cells. So for that reason, they're using a chimp virus. The chances that you'll have antibodies to a chimp virus are a lot lower compared to a human virus. The Russian Sputnik 5 is using a human virus, but they actually use two different types of human viruses to try to circumvent that antibody response. Okay, so let's get back to it.
Its genetic code. The adenovirus vector is engineered from adenovirus DNA by removing essential genes to stop it being able to replicate, so it can only act as a carrier and not cause disease. Adding the coronavirus spike protein DNA creates the full genetic sequence for the
Okay, so cool. So here they're talking about how they changed the genome of this virus. They removed E1, which is the gene that's responsible for replication of the adenovirus, and they also removed E3, which is involved in evading the host's immune system. It's not really relevant to making the virus safe, I would say. But from my understanding, they usually take it out to make room for whatever type of protein they're trying to insert in its place. And in this case, they're inserting the coronavirus spike protein, of course. So,
adenoviral vector vaccine. The genetic code is introduced into a producer cell, where it is transcribed and translated to form the COVID-19 adenoviral vector vaccine. The human cell line is engineered to contain the missing adenovirus genes, so that when the vector vaccine is introduced, it can infect the cells and use the cell machinery and missing viral genes to be able to replicate.
All right, so here they're just talking about, how they make the vaccine. This isn't actually how the vaccine is working in your body. So basically they're using a cell line which has those E1 and E3 genes, I'm assuming, and those cells are, consistently expressing those missing proteins so that when the viral vector infects those cells, it actually has all of the essential proteins it needs to replicate itself and, reproduce normally.
Producing identical copies. Vaccine molecules are also replicated with the division of the cells, and the process continues until the right concentration is reached. The addition of a chemical lyses the cells, bursting them open, and the vector vaccine is harvested, ready to be further tested, filtered and purified before being filled into vials.
Okay, cool. And then when they have enough of the virus, then they, break the cells and they harvest it, and I assume they do some kind of like quality control stuff, and then they put it into the vaccine. All right, cool. Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. Let's talk about the efficacy and safety data of this vaccine. These data were from 2 clinical trials which AstraZeneca ran. We had the COV-002 and the COV-003 clinical trials. And to be completely honest with you guys, I had a really difficult time interpreting the results from these 2 studies. If you go through clinicaltrials.gov and you just try to skim through the study design for the COV-002, you'll see a million different intervention groups. And I had a really difficult time interpreting how the study was conducted. So for that reason, I'm going to defer to Derek Lowe, who posted an article in the Science Translational magazine. I think Derek does a really good job, breaking down how the study was conducted and interpreting some of its results. So this was a single-blind, placebo-controlled trial. They had a sample size of about 24,000. We had 8,895 participants who received 2 doses of the regular vaccine, and we had 2,741 participants who received a half dose of the vaccine followed by a full dose of the vaccine. I think the control was something like a meningitis vaccine or a saline solution, and efficacy was measured as how well the vaccine would protect participants from getting infected with the coronavirus. So once 131 COVID cases were confirmed by PCR, the efficacy rates were determined, and they were determined to be 62% in the regular dose protocol and 90% in the low dose protocol or the half dose protocol. In addition, there were no hospitalizations or severe coronavirus cases that were reported from participants that used the vaccine, which suggests that possibly the vaccine might also protect you from having severe disease, which would be very nice. So this is a possibility as well. Okay, so at first glance, these results look pretty promising. Just give people the half-dose regimen and get 90% efficacy, right? Well, there are a couple of issues with the study that, in my opinion, undermine these efficacy findings, and I'm just going to break those down for you right now. First issue was that the half-dose regimen was a mistake. The study was never calibrated to give participants a half dose, and this was done completely by accident. So, if they made a mistake in this aspect of their study, where else did they make mistakes? In my opinion, this mistake undermines their credibility to some extent. So yeah, the mistake is definitely an issue. Second of all, the sample size for the half-dosing regimen is pretty small, perhaps too small to draw any conclusions from these findings. Thirdly, supposedly the half-dose protocol was only administered to participants younger than 56. And what do we want in a coronavirus vaccine? We want to see a vaccine that's efficacious in older adults, in seniors, and people who are going to be at high risk of having a negative coronavirus outcome. So we don't know if this half-dosing regimen is going to be efficacious in older adults because it was not tested in older adults. So this is also a concern. Fourth issue, the adenovirus vector they're using, is that going to be efficacious in the long term? If this is something like an influenza type situation where you need to be vaccinated each year to maintain protection from this virus, is this vector vaccine going to keep working, or are people going to start to develop antibodies? Are people going to start developing immunity to this viral vector? And is that going to hinder long-term efficacy of this vaccine? Maybe AstraZeneca will have to reformulate new vectors each time you get a dose, which would be a major inconvenience. And last issue that I have is with the novelty of this technology. Again, viral vectors, not as novel as mRNA vaccines, but still fairly novel. So again, questions about long-term efficacy. Moving on to safety, the ChAd vaccine performs exceptionally well when it comes to safety. Supposedly, they did not report any severe ADRs with their vaccine. I'd be a little bit skeptical about this. I feel like most drugs and vaccines cause at least some small frequency of severe ADRs, but supposedly their vaccine has not caused any so far. Just to double check, if you look at their phase 1 and 2 clinical trial results, you can also see no severe ADRs were reported here either. So maybe their vaccine is just really safe. Maybe it doesn't cause any severe ADRs. That's definitely a possibility. So overall, really great safety profile, especially compared to the competition. We already know that Moderna reported a relatively high frequency of severe ADRs with their vaccine, and then Pfizer reported some severe ADRs after the second dose of their vaccine as well. Okay, let's move on to Practicality. Practicality is really a no-brainer at this point. AstraZeneca just blows the other vaccines out of the water when it comes to storage. You can just stick it in your fridge and it is fine, whereas with Moderna, you got to keep it at -20 20 degrees Celsius, and it's only going to last you 30 days at fridge temperature. And then with Pfizer, you got to keep it at negative 70 degrees Celsius, and it's only going to last you 5 days at room temperature. And mind you, these medical grade freezers are not cheap. Your doctor's office is probably not going to be able to afford to buy one of these things. And in my opinion, that's really going to bottleneck how quickly people can become vaccinated with Pfizer's vaccine. So definitely a concern here. So let's talk about manufacturing. AstraZeneca performs really good with respect to manufacturing as well. They claim they can make about 3 billion doses of their vaccine by the end of 2021, possibly even more if that half dosing regimen goes through. So yeah, really great manufacturing capabilities. If we look at the competition, Moderna supposedly can make between 500 million to 1 billion doses by the end of 2021, and then Pfizer can make something like 1.3 billion doses by the end of 2021. So AstraZeneca is doing a really good job when it comes to manufacturing as well. All right, so bringing it all together, the ChAd vaccine is pretty mediocre when it comes to efficacy. I'm giving them a 4.5 out of 10, 60% in their regular regimen, 90% efficacy with their high dose regimen, but lots of question marks about sample size, dosing mistakes, applicability to older patients, long-term viability of a viral vector due to immunity, and novelty of technology. So some question marks with respect to long-term efficacy. Safety, they perform extremely well. I'm giving them an 8 out of 10, and this is well deserved. They have reported no serious ADRs, so really the only question marks are with respect to long-term safety. With practicality, they blow the other two vaccines out of the water. I'm giving them a 9 out of 10, and this is well deserved for AstraZeneca. It's stable at fridge temperatures, extremely good manufacturing capabilities, but to get a perfect 10, it would need to be something like an oral vaccine, something like that. So overall, the weight score is 21.5 out of 30. And here's where the ChAd vaccine stacks up to some of its competitors. You can see it's not as good as Moderna's with respect to efficacy, but a better safety profile as well as a more practical profile makes up for it. So it's an overall better vaccine than Moderna's vaccine, in my opinion. Not as good as something like a Shingrix, but that's to be expected. Your vaccine would have to be really, really excellent to be as good as something like a Shingrix.